So it's starting. Hello, everybody. Tell a neighbor, tell a friend. It's Yariel Speaks, and I'm on live today. I'm going to have special guest Tamika Henry, and we're going to be talking. So I'm fumbling with this thing to see how it goes, and I'm adding her. Viewers, add viewers to be in your broadcast. Okay, here we go. Here we go. I just invited you. And I think I'm going to invite Stephanie in case she pops up. I don't know if you can do two people at one time, but I've invited her.
Right. So now I'm looking how I can join. I think I'm gonna have to get off the phone
Okay, yeah,
and
get off the
join that
phone
way.
because when I
Okay.
tested it earlier, our phone call was
Yeah.
in the thing. Okay. So there we
Okay.
go. Okay,
All
bye.
right, I'm about to do it.
Okay, bye.
Okay.
Hi, Kanisha. Thanks for tuning in. I'm about to do a live stream with one of my good Judies from Detroit, Michigan. She her daughter was slain, and so this video is going to be about surviving and the aftermath of trauma. Her daughter was slain by her ex-boyfriend, or an off again on again boyfriend, a level of domestic violence of sorts in Detroit a few years back. So we're about to be talking about that live as soon as she comes in. I think this is her. Bring Tamika on camera. Add. It's adding. I think we got it. So everybody that's coming in the room, come on in, come on in, share the video. Yeah, we're about to be talking about the grieving for blacks. Hey, Mama. Hey, Lavonda. That is my girl. Hey, Tamika.
It's here.
I think we did it.
Yeah.
We did it.
We
Okay, so now
did. I know.
can you check your Facebook and make sure it's been shared on your page, or
Okay.
that is
I
showing
will
up
do
on your
that. I'll
page,
definitely do that.
so that we can start talking, and I'll talk from
Yeah.
here. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. I hate when I tune into somebody's page and they're like, I'm waiting for more people, I'm waiting for more people, I'm waiting for more people. So I like to just go ahead and get started, because at the end of the day, you can always play the video later and just watch it. But we want to talk today for Mental Health Awareness Month. We want to talk about grief and the loss of loved ones. We've all lost somebody. We've all lost somebody tragically, or we know of someone that has lost someone. So today, I have one of my good Judies from Detroit, Michigan, when I lived back in Detroit. We
Hi.
met during a stage play with TJ Hempfield. What year was
TJ
that?
Hempfield.
2002?
That's right.
2000?
Ooh.
That was 2002. It
Was
was
it
2002
2002?
because I ended up getting laid off from my job at Domino's Pizza, which is a whole nother story. But
Okay. Another live
all the
video.
play
That's another
rehearsals.
video for another.
But
Yeah,
that
yeah,
year that
gotcha.
we did, that's the year it was starring William Murphy, Deatra Hicks, Marcus Cole.
Yes.
Who else was
Oh,
in it?
wow, yes.
Who else was in it? I can't even remember.
How many years did we do it? We did it.
That was I only
Oh.
did that one year. I think some of y'all had done
You
it
only did it in
before.
1 year?
Yeah, but anyway, for those of you
Oh,
who don't know, and
wow.
those that are from the Detroit area, Perilous Times was a
Yes.
gospel stage play that they did every year, and everybody who's
Yes.
somebody, everybody and their mama has
Yes.
been in Perilous Times. As far as
Peerless Times. Yes.
Detroit is just rife with gospel artists, and so from Vicky
Yes.
Winans to Vanessa Bell Armstrong to who else has been in
And wasn't it one of the longest
it's still going.
gospel plays in
It is
Detroit?
still
Is it?
going. They
Yeah.
do it every year around
Yeah.
East.
Mm-hmm.
Girl, I done pushed the wrong button and logged off. But that was
Oh, because I was like, why did it? I was like, it
where she
froze.
at. But
Okay.
we're gonna go on and get to the
Yes.
point. Come on in the room. We want to talk about when I met you. You had the most beautiful little girl. All I can remember is teeth.
Yes.
When I think of Jasmine, I just see those teeth. She was always grinning and smiling and looking. And as
Yes.
usual, we'd sit in our cars before rehearsal. We'd get to the church or wherever the rehearsal was going to be. And we sit out there and do our little lightweight gossiping. I'm going to make it sound good. We do our little lightweight gossiping. And when we would be talking about
We
the
were still growing.
look,
We was
look, we was
growing.
growing. And when we talk about the
Yes.
grown folk stuff, Jasmine, all I see was
Right.
teeth.
Ja-
And then she'll sit there and try, like most kids would do, try and act like she ain't listening, and then maybe ask a question,
Right.
Mama, you talking about such and such? Who's such and such?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you do the mama thing. Girl, get out of my business. Go play. Go find this one. Go find, yeah, grown folk
That
business.
grown folks business right there.
And
Okay.
so
Right.
during that time in
Yeah.
Detroit, you and I were really, good friends to the point of where when my car was in repo,
Yes.
we switched out cars.
We
I would
switched.
tell it.
We did. We
I
got
put
to do what we
myself
got
on
to
blast.
do.
Oh yeah.
We have to
Look,
do what we got to
my
do
my
for
ghetto
for
my
us, for each
ghetto-ness go
other.
back like this. Not that I'm really ghetto, but you and I switched because you were good people. And I remember we lost contact that little time after I left Detroit. Didn't
Yeah.
know, where you
Yeah.
were, and I got on Facebook as we all do. And I discovered you on Facebook, and
Yes.
my first
Yes.
thought was, I gotta see Jasmine. I wonder how she looking now. Because when I saw her, she was a little
Yes.
girl, a little chocolate drop with teeth
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
ponytails. And
And I think at that time she was like graduating high
may have
school
been.
when you found me on
So what
Facebook.
year was this when we had the tragedy with Jasmine? What year was this?
That was
So it
2015.
was
So
January
January 11th,
2015.
2015.
And
Yeah.
so you and I had just hooked up on Facebook very, very recently. That was like the following
Yeah, like
year.
the year
It was
before.
like
Yeah.
2014, and I saw her. Then the next
Yeah.
thing I know,
Mhm.
seemingly I was seeing posts about you memorializing her. And I'm like, wait, wait, wait,
Yeah.
what happened? What? And I began
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
look through Facebook, read the post. And of course, when you see
Yeah.
something like that online, you don't want to call immediately because I want to wait, you know,
Right.
and
And people like, what
right.
happened? Right.
I
Yeah.
want to wait and
The
make sure
infamous
I'm
question.
seeing the right
I think
thing.
it's natural to
Right.
wonder, though. It's natural to wonder that.
Right.
It is.
And so, and without going too deep into that, I just want to say what happened with Jasmine. She was dating. How long had she known this guy?
Hmm. So 2015. So I think they had been dating a year.
Oh, a year. Oh,
She met him at work.
met him at
Yeah, she
work.
met him at
And
work.
how old was
So
she?
yeah, when she passed away, she was 21.
21.
So I always say forever 21. Yes, she was 21. Yeah.
So, and this
Yeah.
was a good guy. This wasn't your typical. He wasn't a thug. Or comes from a great family.
No.
Great family, mom and
Absolutely.
dad, and the family would
Yeah.
go hunting. So they were known to have firearms.
So yeah, so the father would do I guess hunting with the boys, which is if you live in a country like setting, that's pretty typical. It's nothing unusual. I used to go down south and I used to shoot with a guy I used to date with his family. We go out in the back and trees and woods and get a little can and shoot at it.
Mhm.
So nothing to me that was unusual.
Right.
Nothing like that.
So, from my
hmm
understanding, his family had went on one of their typical hunting trips, and they usually clean the guns out, and he gets rid of.
Well, it wasn't a hunting
Okay.
trip. So 2014, December of 2014, basically was the first holiday, the first, that we were all coming together as family because I had just gotten
Hmm.
married. So it would have been the first time we had all three of the girls in the house together, our first Christmas together as a family,
Hmm.
a blended
Hmm.
family. So she was supposed to come on Christmas Eve,
Hmm.
but the weather getting out from Kalamazoo to Detroit Metropolitan Airport to get here to
Hmm.
Missouri, the plane, it wouldn't let her get out. The wind was too bad that day. So she ended up spending that day with his family
Okay.
and him. And then she got here on Christmas. So when she left on New Year's Eve. It was very, very early in the morning, probably about 5
Okay.
a.m. So she was with us some days. We spent some time together and talked and all of that other great stuff, that mom and, parents and kids do. Well, hopefully. So we had, a good time and she went back home. Now, I have to fast forward
Okay.
because I did not know the details
Okay.
until the day of sentencing.
Hmm.
So when she was killed, there were a lot of questions, like what happened and why. And one of the things I stood on from the very beginning was, I just want to know the truth. That never changed with me. I said, I just want to know the truth.
Okay.
And I prayed. I am a woman of faith,
Right.
as people know. I pray, and I have a relationship with my Father. You know what I'm saying? I have a relationship with God. So He speaks to my heart. He speaks to my spirit. So I knew that once I got the truth, I would know. And everything else that was coming, I'm like, but I knew. So the day of sentencing, we keep going, I don't want to be too long, but the day of sentencing was when I found out his attorney started talking to me after I got up and spoke. Her grandmother got up and spoke. My uncle got up and spoke. The attorney wanted to know if they could say some words, but the attorney started speaking to me directly. He said, Mrs. Henry, I don't know what you know or what you understand about what happened that day, but the day, either Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve, and I don't know which day it was. I think it was Christmas Eve, but they were out in the back, so out,
So
maybe shooting rabbits or something like that. And it was him, and it was his brother, and it was his dad. And so apparently, as I understand it from that day, that the little brother brought the gun back in. They threw the gun in the case. It wasn't pulled out again until that day, until January 11th.
okay, so let me catch
And he
everybody
was
up.
at,
Let me
okay,
catch them up.
okay.
So basically what happens was, ultimately, and I didn't want to stay on this long because I really want to talk more about healing and trauma, but we'll see
Yeah,
how Holy
absolutely.
Spirit leads this. You never know. Maybe this is what needs to be discussed. But we're interviewing Tamika live now. And at the time, she's born and raised in pretty much in Detroit. I know you were born
Detroit.
otherwise.
Yeah.
Born and raised in
Mm-hmm.
Detroit.
Yeah.
Her daughter,
No, I was born in
born in
Detroit. Yeah, I
Detroit.
was born in
Her
Detroit.
daughter was
Yeah.
away in college in East Lansing,
No,
Kalamazoo,
Kalamazoo.
Michigan, and she'd taken a
Hmm.
break off from school, but she was with her on again.
No, she wasn't on a
She was on
break.
well, she was in her apartment
No.
with the boyfriend,
Right.
and they
Right. So she went to Western Michigan
okay,
University for the first couple of years, and then she transferred to Kalamazoo Community
okay,
College to finish out any liberal arts and anything she could take at a more reasonable rate.
okay,
Because, mama gotta help.
okay.
So,
Hi Kim, hi Tammy.
yeah.
Thank you all for joining in. I want you guys to tag anyone who has lost a child or a loved one, because this is what we're talking about today. We're talking about healthy grieving and some things to go through. But first, I wanted to let everybody know Tamika's story in case you haven't met her yet. So, her story is she had this beautiful daughter who, at the age of 21, gets into a light argument with a boyfriend who was not known for being domestically abusive, or
Well,
was he? Am I telling it
well, so,
wrong?
uh, well, so what happened was, apparently, as the neighbor was recounting on the in the preliminary examination. So when you go through something like this, for those who have never had to go through this, and I pray that you don't, but there's a series of court dates and things of that nature. So the preliminary examination is where they find out whether or not it's going to be bound over for trial, whether they have enough evidence to bound this over. So in the preliminary examination, they interviewed the neighbor from upstairs,
Okay.
and the neighbor said earlier in that day that she heard them arguing.
Hmm.
So now this is hours later, and apparently he picked up a gun, he pointed at her head, and he pulled the
Right.
trigger. And that's kind of the point blank. That's the
Point
bottom
blank.
line. If you're going to take it at the lowest common denominator,
Right.
that's
He
it.
pointed the trigger. Which, yeah.
Whether he knew there was a bullet in there or not, whether he thought there was a bullet in there or not, whether he didn't mean, you don't pick up a gun
Right. And
and
pointed at
point it at
anybody.
anyone
So this is a lesson learned.
unless
Yeah.
you intend to use it.
Exactly.
Yes.
So
Yes,
he
it is.
he points it at her daughter, and of
Hmm.
course a bullet comes out. in the end of things, when we get to the court trial, he says he didn't know the gun had any bullets in it at all. So,
Well, he didn't state that.
no.
So
Oh,
he didn't state that until, so we have had a conversation via a letter.
oh.
And that's probably, yeah, that's part of the part that the healing or forgiving part that people
Are we able to
need,
even
some
talk
people may
about this
need.
online then? I thought this was a thing.
Um,
Should we skip this part?
yeah, I mean, we, I mean, it all depends how much time, because of course, me, I'm always like, people don't want to watch long
Okay.
videos, but you know, even in the beginning, let me say this,
Mhm.
even from the beginning, with all the confusion and the devastation, the unbearable pain, the not being able to breathe,
Mm,
I still didn't feel hatred.
mm. And that's the thing.
Even before I knew what happened,
So the
I didn't feel hatred. I felt
all
angry.
right.
I felt angry.
Stephanie's
I
here.
felt hurt.
Stephanie,
Hi,
Stephanie, you want to
Stephanie.
come on camera? Can I bring you on, please? I wanna.
She's very like me.
Hey, Stephanie is my super shrink. She's my go-to referral. Anytime I think of somebody who needs a therapist, I always refer Stephanie, um,
Yeah,
because
she's
she's a
amazing.
counselor who just happens to also be a Christian counselor for those of you who are afraid to try. I think it'll only let me do one person at a time. But Stephanie, I would
Okay.
love to
Yeah.
drill you and ask you some questions about trauma and signs of trauma and things to know about trauma. I think I can only do one person at a time, though. Tamika, if you want to, you can hang up and I'll come back. But just to tell Tamika's story in a nutshell, she lost her daughter to what would easily
Yeah.
be described as domestic violence. In my mind, I'm thinking that
Hmm.
it wasn't one of those volatile, intentional situations that you see of on like Fatal Attraction, where you already know, or Snapped, where you know somebody's been following somebody. And it wasn't anything like that. This was just young people doing stupid stuff with deadly weapons,
Very
and,
stupid. Very
that was what
stupid.
happened.
Very
And
stupid.
so the thing is, when you are, a believer, or you're a person who wants
Hey,
to go
Tracy.
the route of forgiveness, how do you get over it? How do you deal with it? Um,
And
yeah,
I like to tell people all the time, and it doesn't matter if it's a loss of a child
right,
or a loss of a mom. That loss, the 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 aftermath or the effects of that loss is dependent upon the nature of the relationship that you had with that person.
right,
So mine just happened to be my
right,
daughter, and I have lost many people in my life. There was no pain that compared to the pain of losing her,
right,
even to this day, to this very day. But what I do say is, you don't get over it. You learn to walk through it. You learn to live with the
right.
loss. You don't ever get over it.
Let's
That's not something you ever get
let's
over.
talk about loss from this angle. When it comes to when you lose a loved one and you are the eldest child or the next of
Hmm.
kin, your
Hmm.
responsibility is to get that funeral put together, to let everybody
Hmm.
know what's going on. You got to get dressed up, get your hair
Hmm.
did, and come down here to the
Hmm.
service and all this stuff. Can you
Hmm.
tell me what was going through your mind when it comes to strength? Was this a Valium thing? Did you have to be medicated? What got you through that whole phase of?
That's a
Yeah,
great
yeah,
question. Yeah, that's a great question. And I have nothing against those who need any type of medication to help them during periods of their
mhm,
life. Um, I mean, I just thank God that that wasn't part of my story. Um, Even from the beginning, it wasn't part of, the journey that God had me on.
right.
So I didn't take Valium. I didn't have to take
So what
anything.
did you tell yourself?
I was
What was that inner voice? Because there's always something talking to us.
so in growing up in church, growing up in learning, we study the Bible, right?
Mhm,
So we studied the Bible and we learned all of these scriptures. And then when the day comes that you have to put those
Into work.
words
Yeah.
into work,
Mm.
it's different. It's different. The first night I laid there, I could not sleep.
Mm.
We had to get the first flight that we could, and it wasn't until 6 a.m. So my husband, having us just drove from Sacramento, um, 5, 6 hours back to, Palmdale, California. And he was able to doze off, and I was glad because he needed that because I needed him. So I lay awake. I laid awake and I opened up that same Bible that I had studied for years.
Mm.
I thought about what I would tell someone else.
Right.
I thought about what I would tell her
Mm.
actually. And I have always told her through everything that we've been through, raising her as a single mom and, dealing with financial struggles, dealing with other struggles in our life. And I've always told her to trust God, that He cares for our concerns. He cares for us just as much as we're concerned about the problem. So if it's something that's going on with us, He doesn't just shut us out. He doesn't turn His back. He's there. And so in that very moment, and I don't know how else to describe it, but I felt Him. I felt God
Mm.
with me.
Mm.
I felt the Spirit with me. I felt His strength. Because honestly, when we got out of the car, my legs gave
Mm.
way trying to get up in the apartment
Mm.
to figure
Just
out
fell.
what's
And
going on with
so
my life.
at this, and you're talking about the first night you're hearing that your daughter has been murdered by
Hmm.
someone that she knows.
Absolutely.
You got the call
Absolutely.
because the families were so close. Her family and his family, they had you down. They had his mother down as a emergency contact,
No,
right?
no, I called her.
Okay.
So what happened was I got the call from the hospital. And when I got the call from the hospital, immediately I'm thinking, who could get to her? I called her grandparents first. And then I said, oh no, you know, um, his family is there. So I called his mom and I told her that Jasmyn had been shot and asked her could she go to the hospital. And her reaction was just like a mother would be. She was hysterical, she was crying, she said they were going. And so I had no idea the details of
Mm.
anything
So
else
you didn't know her
beyond that.
son had
So
anything to do with it. You just got a
no, I
call from the
didn't.
hospital saying we got your daughter.
Yes,
Right. Okay.
yes, yeah. Yeah. So, so the things that I went through as far as strength is concerned, the only way I can explain it, sis, is it was supernatural.
Mm. I would
It was
agree. I would agree.
supernatural.
I would think to be sitting here
There's no
talking about
way.
it and to be able to discuss it dry-eyed, not that you don't have any emotions and not that you're not experiencing any
Absolutely.
heart palpitations or nervousness even right now
Right.
as we discuss it. I
Say
look,
that.
I got my towel
Say
ready. I
that.
look, I got my handkerchief. I keep a handkerchief.
Yes,
I
say
got my
that.
handkerchief and
Say that. Yes.
I'm ready to wipe tears because there have been plenty of times that you and
Yes.
I have talked on the phone
Yeah.
and we both just
Yeah.
sat there on the phone and cried together because
Yes,
I don't even
absolutely.
have a daughter. I've raised other people's children, but I don't have one.
Yeah.
And I can't even wrap my mind around imagining something like that happening. And I
Yeah.
know other mothers that have children that are slain and were slain. And you know
Yes.
that it's a thing. It's a thing to get through. And I think it's one thing to say, I trusted in God. I
It's
I
so,
stood on the
yes.
word or I stood on scripture, but
It's so
take
much
let's
easier to
talk
say
really
this. Yeah.
mentally what really goes through
Yeah.
because when I think of a funeral and I think of pulling people together
Yeah.
at a funeral, you think of all the stuff you have to
Hmm.
be strong for. When I think back to my mother's funeral, that wasn't a time for
Yeah.
me to grieve. It was a time for me to take care of everybody else that was there, all of her
Hmm.
high school
Hmm.
friends, all of the family members, all of the
Hmm.
family members that had a judgment, against me
Hmm.
concerning our
Yeah.
relationship or lack thereof. There are things that you have to deal with and take care of people and then get the day over with and then go back to deal
Yeah.
with the reality. And so that's what I want to talk about.
I
Yeah,
want to,
go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah. that I want to say that I am tremendously blessed, even behind the most devastating loss of my life. I am tremendously blessed because my cousin, shout out to my cousin Nikki, she is a phenomenal woman.
Mm.
She handled, I can't even, when I think back, the amount of things that she handled and handled some without, them wanting me to even know that some of the things that were going on
Yeah.
seamlessly. It's a gift.
Hmm.
So I mean, and of course I have a huge support system. All of my sisters and of course my husband, number one, but just and even my church family, my pastor and my first lady, his only lady, should I say, Lady Mormon, and everybody pulled. Usually I was that one. I'm that one that usually speaks at the funerals, writing obituaries. And although, me, my mentor Sherry, and her grandmother and some other people, we sat down and we helped write, the obituary. And I'm like, no, we're gonna change this, we're gonna do this, and we do that. And um, but as far as other than going to the funeral home and making those decisions, they handled so much for me.
Well, let's talk about
Handled so
let's
much.
talk about some of the things that angered you when we talk about or that were
Hmm.
disturbing for you during your grief process. Because anybody that knows anything about grief, I see Stephanie on here. I would love to bring her on and ask her some questions. Tamika, I think you'll need to hang up for me too, because she's staying
Okay, yeah, I
on.
can do
Hang
that.
up, and then I'll click in for you to come back on. As long as you're here, I can see.
Okay,
But I want to bring her on and
yep,
talk
I can do
some more
that.
about grief. And don't you go nowhere, because this is your thing. But I want to talk about
Okay. Yeah,
what
let's talk about
does
this thing.
going on look
Uh,
like. You hear people so many times talk about get over it, let it go. You got to release, you got to let, what does all of that mean? And what does that look like
yeah.
in the middle of the
What does
night
trauma look like?
at 2 or 3 o'clock
Yes.
in the morning when I'm wanting to pick up the
When you
phone and
can't
call
sleep
my
all
daughter or
night.
call my mama or call my uncle, whoever's gone? What does that
Yes.
really
Yep.
look like?
What
And
is
how do
that?
we stay away
Yeah.
from drugs and alcohol and all the other vices?
Because
Yeah.
they're there. Yeah, let's see if
Okay.
she can chime in. I'm
Okay.
gonna get off and let's see if she can
Okay.
chime in.
You
Okay.
go off. Okay. Stephanie, hold on. I'm
Okay.
going to try and let you on. I think I can only do one at a time. I'm new to this, but thank you for all of those who have tuned in and who are listening. We're bringing on a professional because whenever I deal with subjects like this, I like to have a real professional on to talk real stuff, because there's one thing with book sense, and there's another thing with the experience of having professionally counseled people and seeing the outcome of what happened. Stephanie, I think we did it, my dear. How are you? Hey, can you hear me? Say something. I can't hear anything. Are you talking? Check your screen and see if you've pressed, if there's a mute button that comes up, because I'm not hearing any volume at all. Mute. But Stephanie is right here in Metro Atlanta. I believe she's in Morrow, and she's been working for well, she does her own business as a therapist. Looks like she's driving, and I've brought her on, but I'm trying to get some volume here. Stephanie, can you run us through some of the traits of trauma, or what would have been common for somebody like Tamika to come into that kind of... Okay, now wait a minute. I blanked out and it's back on. Oh, okay. Why am I not hearing anything? All right. What I want to ask her is, what would you expect if you know appointments and you know about to talk to somebody who just experienced a tragic loss? What are some of the traits? and come back on again. I'm gonna try and add her on again. What I what I do know
do know is
there we go.
there we go.
Yes, come on and
Yes, come
close it,
on and
girl.
close it, girl.
Look.
Woo! That's a lot of mercy.
Yes. But we
Yes.
gotta be
But
loud.
we got to be
Gotta
loud.
be loud.
Got to be loud. I don't know. It's so good to see you. First of all, just hey, how you doing?
Hey, girl.
Hey, girl. Hey. I'm so happy that y'all are having this discussion today.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
And you only if
Yes.
you
And
only
you only
knew
if
what
you only
all
knew
it
what
takes
all
to
it takes
actually go
to
through and
actually
get this
go
kind of
through
stuff
and get this
done.
kind of stuff done.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. Well, you guys make it look easy. I'm just
Yeah,
so
right.
yeah, right. So happy and so proud of y'all. This is it takes a great deal of bravery to
It
speak
does.
on it does. Such a heavy topic.
Yes.
Yes. So I commend you both.
And hats off to
And hats
Tamika. It's
off to
very brave. It's a
very
very
brave. It's a
sensitive
very
subject.
sensitive subject,
And I
and
didn't want to
I
rush
didn't want to
through,
rush
but
through.
I know
Yeah. But I know
the
the
the the attention
the
span
attention span
of a lot of people can
of a
be
lot of people
short,
can be short, especially on
social media. And
social
I
media.
am getting a
And
crazy echo when
I
I'm
am getting a
talking.
crazy
But
echo when I'm talking.
tell us,
But
Stephanie, if you
tell
knew
us,
on your
Stephanie, if
records that you were
you
about
knew
to
on
deal
your
with
records
someone
that
like
you were about to
Tamika,
deal with
who
someone
had
like
just
Tamika,
dealt with this
who
kind
had
of
just dealt
tragedy
with this kind of
or loss,
tragedy or loss,
what would you be looking out
what would
for
you be
as a
looking out for
professional
as a
counselor? What
professional
would you
counselor? What would you
expect
expect
to see or
to
behaviors or
see or
whatever to come from
behaviors
her?
or whatever to come from her? I mean, strong and heavy emotion. And that can manifest in several different ways. It doesn't always have to look like, crying or being heavy, but sometimes it looks like anger. Sometimes it just looks like a blank period of shock and disbelief. Sometimes it can have denial attached to it. Um, Sometimes it can have an anxiousness, like an anxiousness to try to fix or get things back to what they consider normal. So it can manifest in different ways. Depression, it can also look like a very depressed state. And it can be very tearful. It really just depends on the person. So, I always say grief does not have this specific ingredients and label attached to it. It can manifest in many, many different ways. But you have to give yourself permission to experience whatever your grief process needs to look. Can you hear me?
Now, can you give me an
Now,
example
can
of
you give
what
me an
denial
example of
looks
what
like? You
denial
mentioned
looks like?
denial.
You mentioned denial.
And especially, and
And
I would love
especially,
for
and
you
I
to make
would
it
love for you to
culture
make it culture
specific when it
specific
comes to
when it
Black
comes
folks
to
and
Black
our
folks
ethnic
and our
culture,
ethnic
how we
culture, how we
handle things, which can
handle
be known
things,
to
which
be
can be known
a
to be
bit
a bit
abrasive,
abrasive,
in your face,
in your face,
you know,
you know,
blunt.
blunt.
Give me an idea of
Give
what
me an
denial
idea of
looks
what
like in
denial looks like
typical
in typical
Black woman, a
Black
woman
woman,
of color.
woman of color. So denial, again, it could have many different facets, but in general, I think it could look like just you not being in a place of acceptance that this loss has not only occurred, but that there's a finality attached to this. Sometimes we can experience grief or experience loss and not be able to completely digest that this person or persons, like, they are no longer incorporated into our journey in the regular reality sense that we have. And so you sometimes have people who lose their mothers, and they, because they're in denial, they don't want to really celebrate Mother's Day anymore because they're like, I don't want to acknowledge that my mother is not actually here. So I just choose not to participate in that particular holiday at all. It could look like, it could be more, blatant too. It could be, sometimes you have, this is where you have the people in our culture that be trying to jump in the casket and pull the folks out the casket and stuff. It's sad, but
Right.
and we make light of it. It's so many comedians that make these great jokes about it, but for some people, that's their reality. Like, it's so unbelievable, the finality of that memorial service, that they just have a moment of psychosis and they lose it. And, they do strange or odd, atypical behaviors. And to me, that's an element of denial.
So let me ask
Just
you
So let
this.
me ask you,
What narrative
narrative
should you
should
tell
you
yourself
tell yourself
when you find
when you
yourself
find
where you've lost
where
a
you
child,
lost a child,
a loved one
a loved one
tragically like this?
like this?
What should be the
What should be
the self-talk
the self-talk
getting through a
getting
funeral
through a
afterwards?
after?
um I don't know, Taronda. I think that looks different for different people. I guess the biggest piece is that, okay, this has in fact happened, and the acceptance that, as tragic and as hurtful as it is happening, and that it's going to take a lot of time, excuse me, in order to be, not, I can't even say be okay, because I don't know if you're ever really okay, but it's going to take time for you to really, really digest it and adjust to a new normal.
Right.
Right.
But it's going to be okay. It sure don't look like it at the time, but it's gonna be okay. God is gonna give you the strength to get through it, and you just got to be patient with yourself. I think that's the biggest thing too in your self-talk. Be patient with yourself, and don't try to go at what somebody else's pace, what somebody else tries to dictate as your pace.
I think
I think
something, because
something
Tamika just
because
put
we
in the comments
put in
here
comments here
that she didn't want
that
to
she
leave
didn't want
Jasmine at
to
the
leave Jasmine
cemetery.
at the cemetery.
Yeah, I saw
So
that.
the burial,
So
there
the
was a sense
burial, there
of,
was a sense
I'm
of
neglecting my daughter
I'm
by
neglecting
killing
my
this
daughter
woman
by killing this
and
woman
leaving.
and leaving.
So
Yeah,
So
I think another part of that too is just, again, leaving her at the cemetery symbolizes that you have to let her go. Yeah, the finality of it. And that is extremely painful. My sister brought to my attention that, when I grieve, when it's a significant loss, I I'm that family member that lingers at the burial site.
mm,
For me, it takes me some time to process that. And like, and sometimes family members have tried to pull me away and say, come on, let's go to the repast. And my sister has stepped in and said, no,
let her
this is
let
this
her
is
let her,
she needs to do the process.
yeah.
When she's ready, she'll come to the car. Just give her space. She don't need you to console her. Just back away and let her have her space. And I learned that about myself. That's what I need.
Process. Yeah.
process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And
because
I love the way
it's
you said,
painful.
I learned that
I
about myself.
learned that
Are
about
you hearing
myself.
the
Are
echo?
you
I'm
hearing the
hearing the
echo?
children as
I'm
the
hearing the
children.
children as
I'm
the
wondering,
children.
should I end
I'm
it
wondering, should I
before it
end it
becomes fresh?
before it becomes
Because
fresh?
this is too good
Okay,
Because this is too
information
good information
okay.
not to discuss.
not to discuss.
You want to end it and
You
start
want to
over? Do you
end it
have
and start
time?
over? Do you have time?
Yeah, I have a little time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
trying to
All right.
end it. Just
I'm trying
stay
to end it.
alert,
Just
and I'll change you guys back in. This is
Okay.
ridiculous. Okay. All right. Sis.
okay.
All
Well,
right.
everybody, we'll be back. Just listen to the next post.